We're not live yet.
I think I'll.
There. Okay. Nope. No, we're still city council meeting. Okay, now we are.
Okay, so we did our introductions. I'm going to just continue then. Thank you, Council President. And so we are going to public comment, and Rebecca, we don't have any at all at this time.
Public comments submitted.
Thank you. So we will be on to committee business. First items, item A, approval of minutes, July 12, 2021. If you have any changes or revisions, please let me know. If you don't, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I approve the minutes today have been submitted. I move to approve the minutes, yeah.
Motion by Councilmember Moore, seconded by Councilmember Tran. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have approval of minutes for July 12th. Thank you. So we're on to, let me make sure I don't miss anyone again. Okay. Item B, master lease agreement with Verizon Wireless for small wireless facilities. And that is Cole. Cole, are you on? I see you're on. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, council members, council chair Burzo. Let me get my screen share going. Up. The host has disabled sharing right now. Rebecca, if you'd be so kind. Rebecca?
On it, I'm trying to figure out how to do it because, give me just a sec. Aha, figured it out.
Yeah.
Okay, try now.
Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm here to discuss the Verizon Wireless Master Lease Agreement. The policy question in front of you is, should the council approve entering into a master lease agreement with Verizon Wireless for small cell wireless attached to the city lights? Verizon Wireless was approved for a franchise in order to install small wireless. This will be the next step. They are requesting to install small wireless facilities in place of some of our streetlights or attached to existing streetlights. The master lease will be modified with each one of the streetlights as an addendum, which will be approved administratively for the purposes of the deployment. The work will all be guaranteed through performance and maintenance bonds, and the insurance will be consistent with the city standards. Now, in typical microcells have multiple units on them. The small cell wireless has been due to an exponential increase actually, in the use of wireless in the past few years. To be competitive, we must keep up with the technology. Demand will be met through the implementation of the 5G network, and 5G relies on densification of the system using small wireless. This is a picture of a small wireless system on a replacement street light. As you can see, the antenna, the equipment box, concealed banner to hide that, and the fiber optic connecting it back to the network is underground. The financial impacts, a $2,000 deposit for the master lease agreement was paid by Verizon to prepare this. The maximum fee, of course, is $270 per year for each location. Then they're asking for a 10-year term plus a 5-year automatic extension. The master lease addendums will specify each one of the locations, and a right-of-way permit will be required for each installation. The two options that we bring forth to the council is approve the master lease agreement or do not approve it and propose and provide us some direction. Any questions? The mayor's recommendation, of course, is to approve the master lease. Questions?
Thank you, Cole. Any questions from the committee members at all? Hearing, seeing none, Council President Honda.
Thank you. Cole, what are the design standards that this will look like, and will it be consistent on every
Yes,
light
ma'am.
pole that they use?
Yes, ma'am. We have installed design standards through the franchise agreement, and with just minor modifications, they will all look almost identical to each other.
So will people be able to look at a light pole and know that it's there?
By the fact that it sticks between 5 and 7 feet taller than the light itself, they probably will notice it if they start paying attention. But as they deploy, it'll be one of those where people stop looking at them.
So how long do they do all of the light poles at one time, or do they start out and do a few at a time?
In the example right now, we have a master lease with AT&T. Currently, after a year, we have just 2 sites that they still haven't completed the deployment to. So it'll be a 1 site or 2 site improvement as they determine their need.
So this could go out for a few years before they're completely done.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and they don't need to come back to us at any point in that after we approve this?
No, they do have to come back each time they want to deploy to one of our streetlights. That is the addendum that will go on to this agreement. It'll be approved by the Public Works Director and the law.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Committee Member Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Cole, for the information. I was just curious if you know of how many sites they plan to do.
That's never been shared with us. It's all based upon some RF signal strengths that they do as they're doing the designs. Initial proposals, they estimated between 50 and 100 each. But, you know, we don't know because T-Mobile uses a different mode. They did use a different set of frequencies. The number of small cells for them will be greatly reduced in comparison to AT&T and Verizon.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, any other questions? I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed agreement to the September 21st consent agenda for approval.
I will second that.
Motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you.
We're down to item C for authorization to apply for and accept the swim capacity grant. That's Emil. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. Let me share my screen. There we are. So I'm here to discuss the fiscal year 2021 through 2023 capacity grant through the Department of Ecology. The policy question at hand is, should the City Council authorize the staff to apply for the ecology water capacity grant? The grant is awarded by the Department of Ecology on a 2-year rotating basis. The awards are typically between $25,000 and $50,000 to aid each jurisdiction who is assigned with complying with the MPDS permit, the tools that they need, and the financials, the money that they need to implement the programs they need to meet the requirements for the permit. In the past, the city has been awarded the grant and has used it for a number of things: purchasing equipment, education and outreach activities, public involvement. We used it for the IDD program and stormwater system mapping and assessment. This year, through this cycle, we will be adding the Stormwater Monitoring Action Plan, which is a requirement for the permit that is coming up in the following year, and also DE&I outreach to foster broader awareness and community involvement. The options to be considered are to authorize the staff to apply for the water quality capacity grant through the Department of Ecology, or to not authorize and to provide some guidance. The mayor's recommendation is to go ahead with option 1 and to forward it to the City Council on September 21st, 2021. You all have any questions?
Thank you, Mio. I have a quick question on your DEI outreach. Have you guys formed that and what it looks like at all right now?
Sheila, our previous education and outreach coordinator, was handling that, and her position is in the process of being replaced, along with Jeanette, which is forming a new team. Those are the 2 education and outreach personnel in the department. Once they are hired on, I'm sure that role and that direction are going to take new form, but we have been working on it through another contract that we have with a company called Ecos. And there are a number of things that are being done to promote, at least in this department, for stormwater education for diverse population in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Barroso,
Yes, go ahead, EJ.
Can I jump in real fast? Just to be clear, since I know there's been a separate conversation going on with council, this is not the same as the DEI position that Vanessa is working on. This is something different that's required under the MPDS permit. So although that staff person will probably have some influence on this program, it's not the same topic as that. This is a separate DEI requirement out of our MPDS permit that we are fulfilling. That has no tie to the DEI that the City Council has been advocating for.
Right. Nope. Thank you. Questions from the committee members at all? None? Council President Honda.
Thank you. And how much is the grant for?
It's for up to $50,000, and from my understanding, the city has always, and it's typically awarded to all the jurisdictions in the state. The Department of Ecology provides this money so that we can comply with the permit, but it's typically up to $50,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and I'll take a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed authorization to apply for and accept the swim capacity grant to the September 21st, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Okay,
Second.
I have a second. I have a motion by Committee Member Moore, seconded by Committee Member Tran. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Emil.
Thank you.
We're down to item D, downtown planning grant application. Keith, floor is yours.
You are muted.
Sorry, I got the video and forgot the mic. Thank you, Committee Chair Baruso, committee members Moore and Tran, and good evening, Council President Honda. Let me try and share my screen at this point.
Should be the green button in the center at the bottom. There we go.
Okay, are we there? Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the policy question this evening is, should the City Council authorize staff to submit for the transit-oriented development implementation and housing action plan implementation grants? Besides having fun names like Toady and Happy, we'll talk about these here a little bit more so you can understand what we're talking about. So back in April, staff sat down with the council members and talked about downtown. And a number of the things that we talked about were what did the City Council really want to see in the city's downtown? And things like walkability and pedestrian streets and making downtown a destination were all pretty primary in the responses that we heard from the City Council. And so I clipped a piece here from an article called Key Characteristics of Vibrant Places. And what it says is, as with any organism that is pulsing with life, the robustness and health of the flow of people is paramount to establishing the vibrancy of a city. Connectivity, ease of, and access for people is the lifeline of urban activity. And as we think about our downtown, what we have, and I remember this vividly from the very first LUTC meeting I came to, and the council were chatting with Ryan Medlin about getting across 320th. And I think there's been a lot of conversations of how do we get pedestrians and bicyclists across 320th, especially in our downtown area. And so what will the grants be used for? Community development and public works staff will work with a consultant to explore design alternatives to facilitate pedestrian and bicycle crossing of South 320th. This work could include conceptual alternative designs for a 21st Avenue South crossing and traffic modeling to support the redesign. Any work coming from this effort will assist community development and public works in continuing efforts to provide the ingredients necessary to ensure the city center is successful. So as we talk about the city center area, here's the Commons, and you can see right here's the new Sound Transit station. And these parcels here are the surplus Sound Transit parcels that we've been talking about. This is the PAC and the Town Square Park. And what we're really talking about is how do you knit together this part of our downtown with the south side of 320th for people who are trying to get there with bicycles and on foot. This diagram on the right-hand side of the slide is what we currently have in the pipeline for a new signalized intersection at 21st Avenue. 21st Avenue is this location right here on South 320th. And as you can see, it takes so long for a pedestrian to get across this intersection. It's a two-phase crossing. So on the first green cycle, you get to this median and you're kind of standing out here in the middle of traffic, waiting for your next green cycle to get across. And as we talk about pedestrian orientation and walkability, this is a hard way to get across the street. So the options considered are authorize staff to submit the proposed grant application for this kind of mobility project, or 2, do not authorize staff to submit the proposed grant applications and provide direction to staff. So the grant for the transit-oriented development grant is up to $250,000, and that's coming from the Department of Commerce, and there's no city match for that. And then the Housing Action Plan Implementation Grant, also from the Department of Commerce, is up to $100,000, and there's no match for that one either. So the mayor's recommendation is option 1, forwarded to the September 19th, 2021 City Council consent agenda for approval. And with that, I'll ask if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Keith. Let me take a look here real quick. So it's just the proposal is kind of to start doing the legwork on it. And when do you see the study to be done, Keith, at all? Or is there an end time or end date or a projected timeline on that?
So yeah, that's a great question, committee chair. So obviously, you know, we're behind the gun right now. The transit station is going to open, you know, projected in 3 years, in 24. And, you know, obviously what we're trying to do is come up with an alternative to what's on the table right now for being able to get people from the transit station to the Commons and back across 320th. We're not going to make it. Even if we came up with a fabulous design, you know, within 6 months and could potentially hire someone to do design work and get construction done, we're not going to make a 2024, you know, station opening. But, you know, the goal is to kind of get caught up and to try and move this as quickly as possible. I would hope that if we were successful in getting either one or both of these grants, we could move forward with doing some work, you know, in a 1-year cycle. I would assume it's like a 1-year design alternative exploration project.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I just also want to let everyone know we have been joined by Councilmember Lydia Sepatasan. She's with us now. So any other questions? Committee Member Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Keith, I'm not sure if you are able to answer this question, and maybe Director Brian Davis can help out. I am reading the memo that you and Director Davis sent to Mayor on the second page. On the top of the second page, where it said the city can also leverage the $100,000 budgeted for downtown planning toward this effort. I'm a little bit confused on this. Have we spent the money that the council authorized some time ago?
I can answer that, but I'm going to defer to my boss if he wants to jump in.
Sure.
Right.
Council Member Trent, we have not spent the money yet.
Okay, if I understand correctly, this was the money that council would like you to hire a consultant, right?
Correct.
I was just wondering what was the hold up on this? I mean, we authorized this money quite some time ago.
Right. So we sat down with each council member in small groups and discussed what they wanted for the downtown so that we could have a better idea of what the council was looking for in a consultant and what a consultant would bring to downtown planning. After speaking with council members, including yourself, about your vision for downtown, the feedback that we got was consistent with the existing comprehensive plan. And so we didn't want to spend money for a plan that we already had, nor did we want to spend money for a specific layout of the downtown to constrict development so much that you were very prescriptive on where everything needed to go. And so what we wanted to do was to come back to the council with a project that would move towards implementation of that plan, the plan that was adopted years ago and the plan that the council with recent feedback has the same vision for the downtown. So it's basically, the short answer is we want to implement the plan. We want to go to implementation now because we wanted to get something on the ground. We could spend a lot of money on more documents, but now we wanted to come back to the council for something that would actually put the plan in place on the ground that we could see. And we found these grants to use and leverage the money that we had set aside for that planning effort to come up with a product that would be a game changer for the downtown, as Keith has described.
So will this application of the grants further delay our desire to have the consultant position in place?
So at the budget meeting, we talked about a position, a full-time position or a consultant. And the council decided to do a consulting expense. Mm-hmm. So to your question of when are we going to bring a consultant on board, what this grant money will go towards, one of the things that we're going to have a discussion about is the traffic. And because we can't do the kind of project that we're showing here without or we can't do it and then have a negative impact on the traffic. We just can't have that. So 320th is still going to need to get vehicles through town. If we were to take one of the north-south connections, like what we're talking about for 21st, and basically reduce the auto traffic on that road, there's going to be impacts elsewhere. And so we're going to have to do some analysis that can find a way to make that happen. And so when we're talking about a consultant, that would be a consultant that could do that work. We could also bring on a consultant to do design work of the 21st Avenue corridor, in addition to the crossing at 320th, if we decide to do that differently. Because right now the downtown is divided. We have two downtowns. One is south of 320th, one is north of 320th. And if we ever want to get the two together without a car, we need to find a better crossing than what is existing now. And so when we talk about a consultant and implementing the plan that already has in place, that's one of the consultants that we could bring on, is to do traffic analysis, design, and to look at the crossing of 320th more closely.
Yeah, thank you for that information. Don't get me wrong. Every time that we had a chance to apply for free money, I'm all for it, and you know that. It's just that I don't want us to further delay the vision already laid out by the council. So that's my point. That's all.
Yeah. Yes, and I appreciate that, and perhaps I should explain a little more directly. We don't want to spend your money on something that you already have. And when the feedback that we got from the council was what we already had in the plan. So we didn't want to buy another car when we got one in the driveway.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Council President Honda, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Tran, for asking those questions. So at the retreat, we would have discussed the downtown plan, and at the retreat is now canceled. So at some point, it would be great to discuss what downtown overall will look like, what will happen with the Target property, what will happen with the mall property. Do we want design standards throughout downtown? We haven't had those discussions. And hopefully sometime the council will have those discussions and we'll have a bigger picture of what downtown will look like. We do need to be able to get from one side of 320th to the other. And we do have a traffic issue in downtown. But I know this isn't what the council intended to spend the $100,000 for the planner. But unfortunately, it sounded like when the council was asked what they had for a vision for downtown, it was not different than what the comprehensive plan was. I would still like to have that discussion and have council know what's going on downtown, what the mall's planning to do, what Belmore Park is planning to do. It's not every day that a city gets to redevelop their downtown and come up with design standards and what we've envisioned downtown to look like. And it's, we're losing time in doing that as a council. So we'll do this, figure out what we can do with this street and make it more conducive to get people from one side of 320th to the other. But we still have other areas of downtown that we should be talking about, especially the Target property, which is owned by the city. So thanks for asking those questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Council President Honda. I would also add that to both your comment and to Councilmember Tran's comment, while we can use the 100,000 to leverage this grant, we don't have to. We can, and we would have to come to you for any approval of expending that amount anyway. So I want to be assure the council that by this presentation tonight, we're not going to take the 100,000 and then spend it on something that you don't know. It's to say that these are the grants that we can apply for to help with these efforts. If we determine, or we in our analysis determine that the city's 100,000 can really take this to the next level, we would come back to you and present that. Otherwise, we would set that aside for, if you wanted to have a brainstorm session that goes beyond the discussions that we had, we can set aside the 100,000 to implement your vision for that. Also, we do need to update our comprehensive plan in a year or two, and the downtown chapter is part of that plan, and so we could also use that towards updating that chapter as well. So I want to be sure that the money that you have budgeted, we will not spend until we come back to you and tell you exactly what it's being spent on. But we didn't want to spend it, again, to my earlier point, on something that we already had.
You read my mind, Brian. I was going to ask a question about that. Thank you. Very good. Okay, any more questions? I don't see any. Okay. If not, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the September 21st, 2021 Council Consent Agenda for approval.
I will second that.
Motion by Committee Member Tram, second by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? None. All those in favor say aye. Go ahead.
I apologize,
Yes.
Chair Russo.
go
Brian,
ahead.
just want to thank you and the staff for being thoughtful and strategic about these efforts with our downtown planning, and taking the time to listen to each and every one of us. And obviously, this is a very important piece to continue to build a strong city for our residents. So, just wanted to give you my thanks.
Thanks,
Agreed.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. Agreed. Thank you. Okay, where was I? Oh, all those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Keith, you're still up though, aren't you?
That was the easy one.
Yeah, that was the easy one. We're down to item E. The ordinance, proposed code amendments for permanent supportive housing, emergency housing, and shelters. Yeah, the floor is yours, Keith.
Oh my. Yeah, sorry, there it is. Got too many windows open. Okay. Good evening again, council members, and welcome, Council Member Asefa Dawson. So this evening, we're going to talk about proposed code amendments addressing permanent supportive housing and transitional housing, and emergency housing and emergency shelters. So the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the city amend Federal Way Revised Code Title 19 to be consistent with the requirements of engrossed second substitute House Bill 1220. That's a mouthful, relating to permanent supportive housing and transitional housing and emergency housing and shelter. So the presentation outline this evening is the policy question. We need to get our vocabulary straight. So we're going to go through what is permanent supportive housing, what is emergency housing and shelter, why are these code amendments coming now? Why does the city need to do anything? Where can these uses go? What is the city's projected need? What control does the city have? And summary of standards. What did the Planning Commission do with all of this? And then what are the next steps? So what is permanent supportive housing? Subsidized, and this comes right out of the bill, this definition, subsidized lease housing with no limit on length of stay that prioritizes people who need comprehensive support services to retain tenancy and utilizes admissions practices designed to use lower barriers to entry than would be typical for other subsidized or unsubsidized rental housing, especially related to rental history, criminal history, and personal behaviors. Permanent supportive housing is paired with on-site or off-site voluntary services designed to support a person living with a complex and disabling behavioral health or physical health condition who was experiencing homelessness or was at imminent risk of homelessness prior to moving into housing to retain their housing and be a successful tenant in a housing arrangement, improve the resident's health status, and connect the resident of the housing with community-based healthcare, treatment, or employment services. What is emergency housing and emergency shelter? Emergency housing is temporary indoor accommodations for individuals or families who are homeless or at imminent risk of becoming homeless that is intended to address the basic health, food, clothing, and personal hygiene needs of individuals or families. Emergency housing may or may not require occupants to enter into a lease or an occupancy agreement. Emergency shelter is a facility that provides a temporary shelter for individuals or families who are currently homeless. Emergency shelter may not require occupants to enter into a lease or an occupancy agreement. Emergency shelter facilities may include day and warming centers that do not provide overnight accommodations. So why now? Well, we have the newly adopted state legislation, which I referenced earlier. Within that legislation, there are deadlines for local city compliance of both July and September. And number three, the city is better served by having standards in place than having no local regulations to apply to these projects. So why does the city need to do anything? The city is better served by having standards in place. Taking no action results in unlimited and unregulated supportive housing and emergency shelter being permitted within the city. So this map is a map that shows where emergency shelter and housing can go. Based on the legislation coming from the state, the city must allow it in any zones that allow for hotels. And so basically everything in black on this map are the zones that we basically currently allow hotels and motels in. And as you can see, it's primary. This big long spine here is Pack Highway. And this is our city center. And this down here is our commercial enterprise zones. And so this is where we allow hotels, and this is where emergency shelters and housing is permitted under the proposed code amendment. And then this map, what this map shows is the areas in black are the areas that do not allow for permanent supportive housing. So what the House bill said was we need to allow permanent supportive housing in any zones that allow residential units. Well, a residential unit is a single family, it's a multifamily. What it is not, so this is our office park and our professional office zones in the city are what is showing up in black here. But other than that, the whole rest of the city is allows for permanent supportive housing to be located in it. So part of the bill says the city needs to provide for its projected need. In other words, when we talk about things like spacing out these facilities, the separation requirements that we can put into our code, or the intensity that we put into our code, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we can meet what we believe our projected need is over the next 20 years. So in doing the calculations based on the Seattle-King County point in time count, we believe that our 20-year forecast is 482 dwelling units. And in conversations with Department of Commerce, we believe that we need to then break that into a specific subset for emergency housing and shelter, which we believe is 207, and then 275 permanent supportive housing and transitional housing units. So here's a summary of, basically I tried to put all of the code changes onto a one-page chart and hopefully lead you guys through a conversation which will make some sense. So if you look at this chart, there's a vertical dark line here. And what that does is separates the emergency housing and shelter on the left and the permanent supportive housing on the right. And the reason why this looks so different is currently the city code allows a land use called social service transitional housing. And social service transitional housing in the Federal Way revised code is almost an exact match to emergency housing and shelter. So what we're suggesting is basically replacing the definition for social service transition housing with emergency housing and shelter that comes from the House bill. And then where you can see it's allowed, it's not allowed in any of our single family zones. It's not allowed in multifamily. It's not allowed in neighborhood business. It's allowed in community business. It will be allowed in the city center core and the city center frame, and then our commercial enterprise zones. Over on the permanent supportive housing side of this chart, what you'll see is the suggested process is a process 3, no matter what zone you're in. And what process 3 is in our city code is it means that there's public notice. So there's one of those boards that goes out on the property. There's mailing to people within 300 feet. And so there's an opportunity for the community to understand one of these facilities is coming somewhere where they might have an interest. We also have the ability to put a cap on the number of units that we would allow in one particular location. And as you can see, we go from a small number in the single family zones to a cap of 50 in the multifamily zones and a cap of 110 in the more dense zones. And I'll explain that on the next couple slides when we get to them. We talk about another big thing that we talked about is separation. And what's currently in the draft code is 1 mile between facilities in our single family zones and our multifamily zones. So in our residential zones. And then when we move to our commercial zones, that recommendation is a 1/2 mile, okay? And then the final column is parking. And we basically it was a recommendation or a suggestion from the Planning Commission, and that was that we also include parking for employees, since there'll be care providers and other type of employees at each of these facilities. So our suggestion is to use the parking requirements. They're the same as a nursing home, which is a certain number of parking spaces based on the number of beds or units, and then a certain number of spaces for the employees. And so I talked about 50 units in our kind of mid-range zone. These are some projects that are 50 unit projects. You can see they're generally like 2 and 3 story woody walk-ups. And both of these projects are actually kind of nestled in single family neighborhoods. And they really, I don't think have that big of an impact on the surrounding areas. And then for our more dense zones, like CE and the city center, we're suggesting 110 units. And these projects, this one here is, it's 103, I think it is. And this one here is 110. So you can see now we're talking about, 4 stories with some tuck under parking. And so the density of these is bigger. But they also do still, I think, fit in with the expectations of the standards within those zones. So the Planning Commission held 2 meetings, 2 public hearings. And as I mentioned earlier, they were concerned about parking, so we adjusted the proposed parking standards. They also asked for us to increase the separation within single-family zones for permanent supportive housing from a half mile to a mile. And staff believe that we still have capacity to meet our projected need if we do that. And then the final thing was they thought there should be operational requirements placed on these facilities. And that led us to proposing this list of operational requirements that the Planning Commission discussed quite extensively. And I think the Assistant City Attorney might want to pipe in about these operational requirements at this time. So I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you, Keith, and good evening, everyone. City legal staff has carefully looked at each of these operational requirements that have been suggested here and evaluated each one to determine and to ensure its legality. There are a number of potential legal pitfalls with operational requirements on these types of uses that we need to be aware of and take into consideration. Legal staff is fine with almost all of these operational requirements. The one that I really want to draw your attention to is F. People who are required to register as a sex offender are prohibited from residing in the facility. After further legal evaluation of a requirement that would prevent sex offenders from residing in the facility, we believe that that is likely an illegal operational requirement and therefore would be recommending that it be removed from the operational requirements. And I'm happy to go into more detail about the specific legal reasons behind that, but I think that's sufficient at least to give you an idea of our legal recommendation as to that operational requirement.
Okay, and I can continue. There's only a couple more slides, Committee Chair Baruso, if you want me to finish up, and then we can kind of go into Q&A.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, so following the Planning Commission's kind of deliberation, and at the end of the day, they did not make a recommendation to the City Council. They felt there were just too many, I think, unresolved issues for them to come up with a recommendation. So there is no recommendation coming from the Planning Commission. But Council President Honda asked us to take a look at what it would look like to increase the separation requirement to 2 miles from 1 for single family. That looks like this. So what we know is that the extended stay, which is about where my cursor is, it's basically going to start the separation requirements, because that's going to be basically the first facility we have to permit. And if you look at it from a 2-mile standpoint, that's where you start to get these white dots. So as you can see, if you extend the separation to 2 miles, there's one here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's really only 7 locations. If you optimize the spacing, that is, if it worked out perfectly, there's really only 7 locations in single family zones where these facilities could locate. And if you took that 2 miles and did it for all the zones, you can see there's one that could pop up down here south of 348, but there's really probably not an opportunity for us to achieve our projected need if we go to 2 miles citywide for the separation for these permanent supportive housing facilities. So the next steps for us, obviously we're here tonight at LUTC, and then those dates are actually outdated, sorry. The expectation would be that this would go to the September 21st council meeting for first reading, and then the October 5th council meeting for the second reading. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Keith. Keith, is there a way you can overlay the mile and the 2-mile one at all, the maps?
Unfortunately, not here.
Okay.
I can put the 1-mile map up if you guys want to see that one, but I can't.
Can you see that again? Sure.
So the 2-mile one is part of this presentation, but I could pull up a different presentation to show what the 1-mile one looks like, or I could provide that as part of an update memo for the first reading at the council on the 21st.
Okay, let me think about. But I had another question real quick too, Keith, and maybe I missed it, but you mentioned the process 3, but did you say anything about process 2? Maybe I missed that one.
So yes, so where we're at, the reason why there was a suggestion for process 3 is the public notice component. You don't hit that public notice component until you hit a process 3. So if the intent is for us to provide as much notice to the community as possible to, engage with the process, that really is a process 3. If we go down to process 2, then those noticing requirements disappear.
Okay. How long would it take you to bring up the 1-mile map?
I think I could probably do it fairly quickly.
Okay.
Famous last words.
If you can, that'd be great. Then I'll see if there's any more questions. Can you remember if there's any other questions for Ms. Naveen? Okay. I'll keep stalling for you, Keith.
Thank you, sir.
We do have a question from Councilmember Asafa, so go ahead, Lydia.
Thank you, Council Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It's not really necessarily a question, but it's a comment or maybe a request. I know the public is very concerned about anything that has to do with housing, be it any format, any form unless it's single family housing, right? For various reasons. Is there a way to put together frequently asked questions and maybe put in these answers, including the definitions that you guys presented earlier about the different forms of housing? And if there's any policy exceptions or stringent that we have, then is there a place to explain that? For example, why is it not okay to do the sex offender request within these housing projects, because a lot of times we are everybody is concerned about sex offenders. So if there's a reason why that requirement is not legal, then why not? And how could it be explained? And I think those FAQs could be a good resource for people to go to and review and look at and understand, rather than them wondering. And some things are outside of our control. So even having that, saying that this is not a city enacted, but rather it's, whatever. I think that would be very helpful for everyone and for us too, because we could always refer people there and we ourselves could use it as a resource. Thank you.
I think that, so great suggestion, council member. I think we could definitely put together an FAQ that would be able to maybe provide some of the answers for some of these questions, because you're right. There was a lot of public engagement at the Planning Commission meetings, and so that could definitely be, I think, helpful. And Chair Baruso, I am striking out.
Okay.
And I apologize for that. Oh, I might have one more. Hang on.
Okay. Good
The
faith.
problem is I have too many documents titled 1220. Oh, I found it. Whew, nice. All right. Hang on, everybody. Let me now get back to the meeting. Okay, so this is what it looked like originally when staff proposed, when the initial proposal was a ½ mile separation. So this is a ½ mile, and you can see, looking at this, what a difference this looks than the 2 mile separation that we looked at just a little bit ago. And I hope I didn't speak too soon. Here we are at a mile. Okay, so here's your mile separation, Committee Chair Baruso. So this is what it looks like, and I think the assessment from staff and the Planning Commission, it's almost like a Goldilocks thing. This looked just about right, and we did some math to make sure that we could meet the projected need that we thought we were going to need to meet, and this seemed like it would work for us. So I think we felt pretty comfortable that the mile separation was not going to be a problem.
Perfect. Can you, again, can you include that for report to council meeting? If you can overlay it, if you do overlay to that, it'd be really quick for you to do that. Then we can all see it.
Definitely do that.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you, Keith. Any other questions from anyone? That was a good subject. Oh, okay. Council President Honda.
Thank you. I would suggest to all council members if they could possibly go look at and watch the last 2 Planning Commission meetings, because there were a lot of questions and answers, and from the public and from the Planning Commission. So I think it would be really helpful. It's about 6 hours or so, I think, of meetings, but it would be very helpful as you ponder this and as it comes to council next week. So I would suggest doing that.
Thank you. I know there was a lot too, in those meetings, but they did very tough work. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If not, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on September 21st, 2021.
That's well done, Councilor Tran. I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Tran and seconded by Councilmember Moore, both committee members. Any other discussion on the motion? Council President Honda, you still had your hand up. Do you have another question? Oh, took it down. Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, everybody.
Great job. Thank you very much. So we're down to the last item. It's always Ryan. A progress update on sound transit activities. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Chair Baruso. All right, good evening, Chair Baruso, committee members, and council presidents, as well as council members. My name is Ryan Medlin. I'm the city liaison to Sound Transit, here to give the monthly update. So starting with the Federal Way Link extension, clearing grubbing continues along I-5, as well as they're starting on some of the retaining walls. Work may or may not slow down as the wet season approaches, but we're working with them to make sure that the sites are ready for the rain either way. There are going to be some new shafts drilled near South Star Lake and Military Road for another aerial guideway structure. This is the second to last area where they're going to have to construct columns for where the guideway will cross a public road, with the final one being at 288th and Military at a future date. Or 288th and I-5, sorry about that. So utility relocation work by Sound Transit and in coordination with Lake Haven has begun along South 320th. They are working at night and Monday through Thursday. The work is pretty much west of 23rd Avenue, right there along where the new columns are needing to be installed. And also in that same area, the first girders have been delivered, installed in the city center area, and those make up the foundation for what will be the future station structure on top of it. With the operations and maintenance facility south, Sound Transit has completed their realignment framework that mitigates the budget impacts that they are seeing from increased construction costs and as well as COVID-19. OMF South has been identified as a Tier 1 project, and there is a new target open date of 2029. That represents a 2-year delay from delays that they've seen in their environmental review as a result of coronavirus. But it also represents no financial delay. And this wasn't in the memo, but I did want to add it to the slide. But the CEO of Sound Transit, Peter Rogoff, indicated in a CEO update to the Sound Transit Board at their executive meeting back on September 2nd that they expect the release of the report on the summary of DEIS comments prior to the November System Expansion Committee meeting, which would represent late October, early November. And he did indicate that the Sound Transit Board may be making a decision regarding the preferred alternative site for the OMF South in December. Those dates aren't set in stone, but that was what he indicated in his verbal notes to the Sound Transit Board at that meeting. For the Tacoma Dome Link extension, they've also completed the realignment framework. They have separated the construction of all the stations as well as the guideway in this realignment framework with the Tacoma Dome Link extension from the planned parking. They identified the light rail itself as a Tier 1 project with a scheduled open date of 2032. And the associated parking has been identified as a Tier 3 project with a planned opening date of 2038. More to come on that, I'm sure, but this is the update at this time that we know of with what the board adopted in their budget realignment framework. And finally, a special slide that's in response to a question that staff received regarding how many Sound Transit employees are Federal Way residents. A couple clarification, this is construction employment and it's non-Sound Transit employees. And they provided 2 numbers, and these are based on zip codes. So just to be clear, this doesn't necessarily mean they're Federal Way residents, but they took the 5 zip codes that have a portion of Federal Way and the Federal Way potential annexation area within them. On the Federal Way Link Extension project itself, there are 84 journeymen that are employed. In addition, there are 21 apprentices that have worked on the project. Across all of their current projects that are under construction, There are 1,030 workers and 243 apprentices. This doesn't include the Tacoma Dome Link extension or the OMF South at this time because those projects aren't under construction. They are still in the planning phase. So with that, I'll go to questions, but I can go back to that slide if need be.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for your report again. Any questions or any comments from the committee members, council members? Wow, Ryan, you might have got off today. Okay.
Chair Baruso.
Yes, CJ, go ahead.
It looks like Council President Honda somehow got moved to the attendees and has her hand up. I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
how.
Is she on? Council President, are you on? Where'd she go?
Yeah, thank you.
There you go. Go ahead.
Thanks for giving me that information about the employees. And anyway, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. So, any other comments or questions? Ryan, before we let him go? Thank you, Ryan. Okay. Perfect. Okay, is there any other business anyone wants to bring up? Okay, I don't see any. No hands raised. So our next meeting again will be October 4th at 5 o'clock. And I'm thinking it probably might be remote still, but we have to see, I guess. So if that's it, I mean, we are done. So thanks everyone for coming. Rebecca, I'm not gonna let you go still, but this is probably our last meeting with you. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if anyone, some folks don't know, but she's still with us. But do you want to tell us what the big horizons you're going for?
I got promoted to be the Environmental Services Contract Coordinator. So I'm staying here, but I'm moving to a new role. And the next meeting will be staffed by Sarah Gilchrist, who is incredibly efficient, and you will enjoy her, I am sure. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
We'll see you around. I know we will. So thank you for everything. And with
Watch.
that, okay. Yeah, I'll see your name though. That's okay. If we're on remote. So with that, you already say nothing. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And the time is 6:09. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.